Welcome back to a Sallisaw in 5, where we're highlighting people, places, and things that make our county and our city special. And we are here at Sequoyah County Times with my friend Jeff Mayo to check out what you guys have going on and highlight what's going on here, man. So you guys run a lot out of here, and you guys have owned this paper and lots of other papers for a long time, haven't you?
Well, yeah, so we're standing in our press room. This is our press in the back that prints the Sequoyah County Times, as well as 9 other newspapers. We own 8 of those others, plus another in Stigler. And we've owned the Sequoyah County Times since my grandparents started it in June 1932. Oh, wow. And then along the way, they owned newspapers. My dad owned newspapers like, everything from Sepulpa to Chandler, Clarksville, Arkansas.
No way.
And so right now we own papers in 5 counties: in Sequoyah County, Okmulgee County, McIntosh County, Haskell County, and Atoka.
No way.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Now, when you came back to own or take over this paper for your family, you were living in Pacific Northwest at
Yes.
the time? And what did that mean to you to come back and
Yeah, so my parents came out to, my brother was living out there, and he still does, and it's Christmas 2001, they had a family meeting, and my parents said, we want to retire. Do either one of you all want to take it over? My brother was a 25-year Microsoft employee. He does not have a journalism degree, and so I actually raised my hand and said, yes, I do, without consulting my wife, Beth, which she is from Enid, Oklahoma. Okay. So while she's from here, that didn't necessarily mean that she was ready to come back. Right. But fast forward 18 months, we came back. Our daughter was born 2 weeks later in 2003, and we've been at it for coming up on 23 years.
Awesome.
So, so we came back, and my parents had a slow retirement. My dad retired first, sort of, and my mom finally did after more than 10 years, 15 years.
Okay.
And then they both passed away since then. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Now, in the paper here, you have a very unique perspective on our city. So what is it about Sallisaw that keeps you and your family rooted here?
Well, a lot of it is frankly, you get the inertia of being here and of owning, the business. And for me, one of the reasons I came back here was I was living in a nice city, working for a big company, but I didn't really know anyone outside of kind of my work culture, my immediate neighbors, and my brother. And here I really felt like we would have a better opportunity to be part of the community, help out in things, everything from putting in playground equipment to supporting bond issues, to working on whatever problems there were that needed to be solved, or shining a spotlight on somebody who needs to be pointed out. So that's sort of the basis of what community journalism is and what drew us back and what keeps us here now that we've been here for so long. Okay,
well, on that note, what do you think is so important about local paper here in our city?
Well, it's all obviously everything's changed since I came back in 2003. Facebook didn't exist, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But the central premise is it's not our paper, it's our paper. My grandfather coined the name Your Times. So whenever we're referring to ourselves in a story or anything else, it's Your Times. It's not it's my Times and it's Your Times.
Right,
but the point of that is the community has a say in what happens with our newspaper.
Okay.
It through whether you support us through a subscription, whether you buy an ad, whether you write a letter to the editor, whether you give us news tips, help us shape the kind of the storyline of our community and in our storytelling. And bad news travels very fast. It's the easiest to find. Good news is often harder. And so one of the things that I like about being here for so long is people are willing to point out to us the good news, take the time. It's really not willing, it's more, we'll take the time to point out to you so you can go help shine a light on them or help someone who's in need, which is also a big role for us.
Do you see the task of local journalism has changed a lot over the years, or what makes it so important right now, local journalism?
Well, I think that it's so important because it's becoming less seen. And, I wrote a column when I was president of the Press Association in 2013 where we still have 24 hours in a day, but now if I decide to play Candy Crush or some other game or do something else or watch videos on TikTok for 10 hours, which TikTok, I don't think it existed in 2013, that's taking time away from something that I might be doing, like reading a newspaper, going to our local website, and paying attention to the more the more local things.
Sure.
One of the problems is when we cover a lot of different topics and a lot of different news, and we have people who will focus on one thing, and if we don't cover it like they're wanting, they abandoned us, not recognizing all the other pieces that
Sure.
of our news we're providing that they're giving up, especially about their local area. One of the things about community journalism is you're basically operating on the premise that you want someone looking into their community, not outward at the rest of the world.
Okay.
And as long as we care about each other, that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Another example, our president, Donald Trump, has been in our paper, but only because a Sallisaw High School student was on stage with the president at Boys Nation.
Okay.
That was what got the president on our front page. It was the fact that we had someone from Sallisaw there, a local person there.
Okay.
And when 9/11 happened, we interviewed someone who was in New York City at the time. We want to bring the local focus exclusively because we don't really have the resources, obviously, to cover national or international news.
Okay.
That's not what we're here for.
Okay, makes sense. A lot of people in our community would consider you a resident expert on Sallisaw history. So how would you say Sallisaw has changed over the years?
Well, steady growth. As a former mayor once told me, during the '08 cycle, we didn't really have a bust because we never had a boom.
Okay.
Our booms were big in the 60s and 70s, which I was born in '72, so I don't really remember that part. But when Curlock and Dam went in, when the interstate went in, and on and on. And I think part of the benefit of living in Sallisaw is also the curse, depending on how you look at it. We are 20 miles from Fort Smith along an interstate, so we don't have some of the things that Poto has, which is always our nemesis competitor of who's doing better, but that's because they're a little further away and the county population below them has nowhere to go but to Poto.
Sure.
So that makes them a better economic draw. I think that Sallisaw is forever positioned with 2 U.S. highways, 1 interstate, 2 railroads, and a navigable river to be something big, as Senator Kerr said in the 50s or 60s, that Sallisaw would be the first city in Oklahoma to 1 million people. I don't want to necessarily live with 1 million other people,
right.
but it did show that there's that, someone else saw growth in us, and I think that Sallisaw, still has it.
Okay. So. What would you say that you're proud to see has stayed the same over the years?
I think this sort of thing, that while the city is twice as big as it was when I was growing up, the people who know each other and want to be around each other and support each other is still there, even with everything negative that might happen.
Okay.
There's a fundamental community per se that supports each other and wants to move forward.
Okay.
And it only takes a problem or a tragedy to really see that in action, and even good things. I was at the police chief's retirement yesterday. It was standing room only.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Who serves lunch at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? They do, and it wasn't the meal that drew the crowd. It was the fact that it was a good police chief signing off.
For sure.
And so I don't know that you see that everywhere you go.
Okay. What's a story that you remember or know about that you feel like captures the heart of Sallisaw?
I've thought there are lots of them that are super personal in the sense of like my dad's reaction to something or my grandfather's and what they did about it. But the one that is not about us, but I just covered, was a storm went through 15 or 20 years ago now and tore the roof at the Liberty School really bad one afternoon. And probably 100 people showed up, and unfortunately for those kids, cleaned up all the debris and basically readied the school to be open the next day.
Oh, wow.
And they didn't get paid. They showed up and did the work, and this wasn't, it was just everyone from businessmen to firefighters and whoever else was around that could go and do that work. And so that's an emblematic story of what kind of people we have here.
Yeah, and that's very similar to what happened last year when the storm came through in the hospital situation.
Exactly.
In the area around there. It was almost immediately when the storm was over, you could hear chainsaws.
Yeah.
People were all over town.
Exactly.
Fixing things.
Exactly.
What's it like running a newspaper in today's world?
The thing that I love is that people still come to us looking for us to get the answer, and that's what we're here for. We can't always do that, and we certainly want to give folks a voice. And I think people mistake us for being on one side or the other, and we might be, but that'll be on the editorial page. By and large, we're here to cover the news, and we are as fair as we can, but we're still human, right? So I think the best part is if someone has a news tip, call us. We will do something about it, trying to look into as best we can with the resources we've got, what's going on in our community, because it's important. And even with all the resources today, that's still a skill that takes time, and somebody needs probably to be compensated for spending the time doing it, which is what our business model was set up to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So on a personal note, you work with your wife.
Yes.
You do a newspaper. What's that dynamic like?
So first off, I'm 5 out of 6 generations in printing and publishing.
Okay.
My great grandfather married Stan Wade's sister and was the second printer by 6 weeks of the Cherokee Phoenix.
No way.
I don't think that he worked with his wife, but he went on to start the Fort Smith Herald, which was the first paper in Fort Smith.
Okay.
And then we skipped a generation in there somewhere, and then my grandfather had started the Sequoyah County Times with my grandmother.
Okay.
And there are lots of family stories about how my grandfather was a personality and the writer, and my grandmother kept the business going.
Okay.
My mom took over in the 70s when my grandmother retired. My dad, took over before that as publisher when my grandfather passed away. And so I grew up with a family business that had done this. This was the second generation by the time I'm growing up in it. So I expected that my parents worked together.
Okay.
When we came back, my wife didn't immediately start working for us, but after a couple of years, she did. And at this point, she can run the whole show. She's our business manager.
Okay.
I love the dynamic of being around her. We don't work in the same office, but she's just around the corner basically.
Okay.
And I love that dynamic, and she does great work. And I'm the luckiest person on earth to have married someone like her with her ability, and that that enabled us to come back and run this business.
That's awesome.
So,
and we got that on tape.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Man, when you think about the future of Sallisaw, what gives you hope?
Well, I think that there's several different ways to look at it, but one of the key pieces is that we own our own destiny, in the sense that the city has its own electric, has its own landfill, has its own broadband, has its own water system, and all of that provides flexibility and or income. And a lot of cities don't have that. So there's not incentives to give, there's not decisions that can be moved one way or the other that have a lot of self-determination, right? When you have all those resources, that means you can do side projects and do other things, and really continue to invest in ourselves, right? Every time I pay my electric bill, I'm paying part of some police officer's salary, I'm paying to get a pothole fixed. I'm not having to pay a separate tax to get that done. The hope I have is probably the same as Robert Kerr, is that we sit in a spot that is great for potential development. We've missed on some things that we're probably better off having missed on. Right now we've got a big upswing with the VA Center, and then, the new Holiday Inn coming in, and all the other little things that come along. There's been so many new housing starts. Probably the best piece of it is that we haven't had someone put 1,000 jobs in one spot at one time that cripples your water pressure, cripples your electric. Like, we think we got problems right now. Holy cow. And that's the last point, is what gives me hope we are a group of problem solvers, and our city government, our mayor's not paid, you're not paid as a commissioner, neither are the others. And that leads to kind of pure decision making. And we hope that you will all spend the time to listen to what the city staff has, and then make the decisions that can carry us forward and invest where we need to invest. So,
that's really good. Last question.
All right.
On the spot. What's one word that you would use to describe Sallisaw?
Tenacious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tenacious.
Okay. Awesome. Man, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. It's really cool how we're getting out there to see what all people are doing and highlight some of the incredible things that our city has.
That's right.
And you know that as well as anybody. Sallisaw is great.
Yeah, and I appreciate you shining a spotlight on it all. This is a great way to do it.
Thank you for what you guys do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, man.
All right.